Hey! You're getting to see me set my camera. So we can go high. Look how tiny I look. How fun is that? Guess that's a better... I don't... Sorry about all this. The way live streams work, especially with the Patreon one, it's like this odd mix of I need to launch it for you guys to start showing up, and then once I launch it, either you're watching me do silly stuff or I'm talking to no one for a little bit. So there's always a little bit of a odd start to these deals, but you get to see a little bit of the behind the scenes in my personality as I set up. Got a different angle today too, so that's fun. This my if you want to know what you're seeing right now, this is my wide angle webcam that I use from January until June. So it's got a nice wide angle lens that normally it's about right here when I was filming before to get the normal scope of my shots. But what you're seeing right now is it's on my tripod where my camera is normally at, which is a foot further back. So you guys get this extra wide shot to where my full 6'1" wingspan, you can see the full thing. I need to experiment with this a little bit. That's actually a lot of fun that I can do all this. And I like my desk being visible. I think it adds a little bit more human personality to all this. So you might be seeing the first version. So actually, even what this is, it's a little noise canceling deal that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen. So you guys are getting all kinds of behind the scenes looks on this one. Oh, giving me all kinds of ideas. Anyway, sorry. Better head over to see if anyone's joining in. Some amazing questions. Jackson, happy Saturday. Happy Saturday to you too. Majestic Demon, good afternoon, Mr. Chandler. Good afternoon to you too. Birdie Hunter, hi. Hello. Jackson, did you see The Irishman yet? No, I've not seen The Irishman. It actually is playing in town, but it's playing at the theaters across town. I live very far northeast, about as far northeast as you can go in the Austin area before you get, you literally cornfields. There's cornfields in the town where I live, and so certain times of the year, corn husks just kind of blow all over everywhere. And once you go northeast or east or north further in our city, it's just fields and farms and stuff. So for me to get to Austin is a little bit of a drive, and there's quick ways to do it with the toll roads, but it gets expensive doing that. So I could have gone to go see it, but it's just also with a movie that long with the drive, because the drive probably 40 minutes to get to the theaters it's at, depending on the time of day, maybe longer, maybe a little bit shorter. So 40 minutes each way, plus a 3.5 hour long movie. It just turns into a 6 hour journey to see the movie. So I haven't gone out, I haven't trekked out to those theaters to watch it. So, and also I think about my days kind of in three blocks. You've got before lunchtime, afternoon, and then night are kind of the blocks that I think. And nighttime could be divided up into two: nighttime with kids awake and nighttime with kids asleep. Sort of two different blocks there. But I normally, for my first morning block is when I film, edit during afternoon block, and then family time, watch stuff, get stuff ready for next day at nighttime block. So it gets just tricky when my nighttime block turns into like a full 6 hours or so, or wherever that 6 hours would be. It just feels like I just lost so much. Like, think about 3.5 hour long movie plus hour to travel. I mean, it's so much time. So anyway, that's a very long answer to say no, I haven't. Matt G, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Jeffrey Seibert, greetings, sir. Greetings to you too. Matt G saw Depeche Mode concert film this week in the theater. If you're a Depeche Mode fan, I imagine it's very cool. I couldn't name one Depeche Mode song, so unfortunately I would not have probably as good of an experience with that one as you did. Ferrari Forest, hello! Hello to you too. Majestic Demon, thoughts on Andy Serkis being cast to play Alfred in the Batman movie? I think it's interesting. because he's definitely not like what you traditionally think of with Alfred. The previous renditions have been a distinctly old kind of person, and Andy Serkis isn't quite, you wouldn't call him young, but he's kind of in that realm to where, especially because he's known for doing all this motion capture stuff, which kind of feels youthful a little bit, even because it's such cutting edge technology. And when you're so associated with cutting edge technology, you're kind of associated with cutting edge. Cutting edge is normally associated with youthfulness. He's a guy in his 50s, but you think about him with all these such iconic blockbusters of the last 20 years with his motion capture stuff. And then, even his version of Claw in the MCU, a very vibrant, dynamic character, very different from what you traditionally think of with Alfred. So he seems really outside the box, and that's probably a good thing. If, the Michael Caine and the Alfred Go versions, I think, were pretty traditional Alfred in the way you normally think about him. Jeremy Irons, I thought, was a little bit, had a little bit more bite to him. I thought that was a nice little touch, but still kind of British, old with the, still kind of proper in the way that maybe that's what I meant to say that. Just has that similar vibe as the previous two ones, but with like a much more of a bite to it. I'm not to phrase that. So Andy Serkis just seems so outside the box that it's interesting to me. You think they're also trying to have a younger Batman again, or more of that origin kind of take for Batman seems to be what they're going for with an established city. So I don't have any negative thoughts on it. It's just different and unexpected. So I'm just curious to see it before I have any strong opinions. Normally when a lot of times when they do something that your first thought is like, what? They've seen something that we haven't seen. I also like the idea of just giving him a little bit more time in the spotlight when you see his face. Because it obviously got to be Claw, but even Claw in Age of Ultron and then Black Panther, pretty still kind of side characters, even though he wasn't even a lead character, a lead villain in those films. So, and he's done a lot of acting work where you see his face, but he's a guy that's much more known to internet movie fans than to the general public. And, average Joe probably maybe has some awareness. Oh, this one guy has done all that motion capture work, but they don't realize that it's the guy that was in 13 Going on 30 and the guy that was in these Marvel movies. So I like the idea of him getting the spotlight to have an iconic, and being in the MCU is iconic, but the specific character, comic book fans know him, but it's not Alfred. It's not. Alfred is iconic, and so I'm just happy for him. Maybe that's all that to say. I'm happy that he's getting something like that. That was a long answer, in typical Sean Chandler fashion. Dear President, I decided to watch movies instead of sleeping last night. Well, movies are good. Sleep's pretty good too. So, but if you're able to do it, go for it. By all means, go wild. I can't do that anymore. I'm definitely starting to feel my age, and when I heard people say for years, like, "Oh, I just have to get so much sleep, or I just don't function like I did before." And for you, what are you talking about? I just push through, and I could push through, but looking back, I can be like, that was definitely not me most like my peak shape or peak performance in sleepless scenarios. But now, if I get under 6 hours of sleep, I'm distinctly off the next day. Like I can fully feel it. And maybe some of that's because right now I'm operating consistently on a pretty high level because I'm creating for myself every single day. And so I can't have days where I'm just like moping around. Like I have to be able to get on camera, have full energy, and have to write stuff, have fresh thoughts, and have what the Sean Chandler people expect from my videos. And so then when I wake up and I have a little bit of a headache because I didn't get enough sleep, I'm just kind of groggy, and I really have to try and rev up that energy, I feel that a lot more now than I used to. And so maybe it's that, but man, I can run on less sleep than 8 hours. Like I don't get 8 hours of sleep hardly ever. Like last night I did, and that was uncommon. But there's a line. I just can't go under that line. And if I get like 3 hours of sleep, I used to be able to just force through that. I just can't do what I used to do. Jackson, do you think they should have waited till after the award season to announce Joker sequel? Seems like it could have hurt Phoenix's chances a bit. I think part of the problem is they didn't announce that. That's not an announcement. That's a report. And those are pretty big differences. Like, Hollywood Reporter, who's about as reliable as you can get, but they're kind of running with different things that they hear. They announced that, and the next day, Todd Phillips came out and he's like, no, it's not really like that. That's not exactly what's happening. So he kind of clarified it a little bit, and it's, we're having conversations, but he's like, we haven't signed anything. That's not like, and there's even conflicting reports as to what exactly all this about other origin story movies and things like that. It's kind of confusing, but that's like, they did not announce, guys, wait for it, October 7th, 2022, we got the Joker 2. Like, they didn't do that. That's when an announcement is, when they say it. Hollywood Reporter saying, breaking news, we hear that. That's basically amplified rumor mill is kind of what it is. Like, it's credible rumor mill. It's not we got this covered who's bad rumor mill. These are actual journalists who have sources that are running with sources. That's what they're supposed to do. It's not really rumor mill, but it's not the same thing as an actual announcement. That's really important to specifically your question, which is, should they have waited to announce it until after they didn't announce it? Hollywood Reporter reported it. So that's what makes some of the stuff tricky, is that would they wait to have conversations in fear that Hollywood Reporter, one of their sources, would find out about it and run a story? Well, of course not. The movies take a long time to make. You don't want to sit on it for 6 months, because that's a 6-month delay. It's either 6 month left prep time you have, or 6 months you have to delay your release. So they're not going to stop having the conversations. But if you have conversations, that means someone can find out you had conversations and report about it at the Hollywood Reporter. Best case scenario, yeah, sure, of course. Wait, don't do anything that kind of clouds the reputation, anything that would kind of put a sour taste in anyone's mouth. Just let the fact that people responded really well to his performance, critics, even people critical of the movie, really positive about his performance. Audiences loved it, and the movie was doing great. So it had a lot of great buzz, specifically about Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, it's best to just let that speak for itself. And then if he wins, and then the next day you announce, by the way, he's coming back. That's awesome. Like, that's the best way to do like a 1-2 punch. Hey, you like the movie? We just spent 6 months thinking about it. We came up with this idea. Anytime it leaks a month afterward with a movie that kind of works as a standalone, you're like, really? A month afterwards? Like, come on. What? You don't have a story yet. What are you doing here? So, but it wasn't announced. It was reported. Key distinction. Jackson Doric, is Matt Damon or Christian Bale the lead in Ford vs. Ferrari? I'd call it co-leads. It's not like you're following both of their characters. Ken Miles, Christian Bale, has more of the character arc. He's the one that, he's in the car and we're doing certain things, and so he's kind of he changes more throughout the film because of the journey he's on, whereas Matt Damon is kind of like the solid rock character that after the first scene of the movie, has basically the same guy. And he has a little bit of realizations, but even his realizations are related to Ken. So even in so much as each of them change, it's in relation to one another. And so I would call it co-leads, but maybe I'd inch out Christian Bale's in the lead, but I don't even saying that, I'm like, I don't know. It's designed as it's a 2-person movie. It's entirely designed that way. So to say one is the lead over the other misses what the movie is doing, that it's all about this kind of partnership and the odd synergy that these two very different guys have with each other, and how they positively affected one another and helped each other see things that they didn't see otherwise. And so I would say both. Ferrari Forest, what is one of your most rewatched movies? Die Hard, probably Die Hard. Die Hard, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Last Crusade, Star Trek 2, Terminator 2, Aliens, Jurassic Park, a lot of that's all the stuff that's kind of my top 10 favorites list. Those are all movies I've watched a lot and that I still watch a lot. Die Hard is one in particular that my wife is more likely, as well as Last Crusade, as well as Jurassic Park. She's very likely to say, "Oh, anytime I'm game, she's game for those movies," and she's likely to say, "Hey, let's watch Die Hard. It's December." She's all on board on that. So those are the ones that immediately come to mind. Majestic Demon, if I may, the Blu-ray movies I picked up this month are Shazam, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Kong Skull Island, and Venom. So a bunch of blockbusters from this year. Actually, some blockbusters from this year and some movies from the past. All movies that I own on Blu-ray as well. Pretty diverse set of movies too. So fun. David Pettis and I watched both of the new It movies back-to-back yesterday. It was awesome. Sounds like fun. That'd be interesting. Obviously I haven't watched both of them back-to-back yet because I don't own the second one. On Blu-ray, I've only watched it one time in the theater, but that could be an interesting one to see how that plays back-to-back. I'm not sure how I guess I'll see sometime in the next year, probably. Jack said, I can't wait for the rest of the films in the Irishman trilogy, the Swedish guy and the German guy. Could be fun. For Friday Forest, what is better about Blu-ray versus digital? Well, the thing that's better about Blu-ray is that you have it, and it's not reliant on your internet connection. What's better about digital is that they're all just right there. You don't have to walk upstairs and grab something. It's just right there. I'm much more likely... just last night this happened. We watched Attack of the Clones because we're watching and reviewing the Star Wars movies, and I went, hey, where's the box with my Star Wars Blu-rays? And my wife goes, I thought we were just going to watch it on Disney Plus. And I'm like, why would we watch it on Disney Plus when we have the disc? Every time we watch something on Disney Plus, at least every 10 minutes, there's some sort of streaming glitch where the image locks and then it catches up or it buffers or something like that. That's what streaming does. That's what digital does, because it's reliant on my internet that sometimes is awesome and sometimes is not so awesome. It relies on my router, which sometimes is awesome and sometimes is not so awesome. And likewise, the services themselves are very glitchy. Disney Plus is a fantastic archive of stuff. The Mandalorian in and of itself is worth $8 a month for a few months, whatever the couple months that it airs. It's worth that the cost of Disney Plus just to get to watch those episodes for those 2 months. But it has the problem of streaming services, which is that it has to buffer. That's the big thing for me, is that the quality is consistent with a Blu-ray and it's very inconsistent with streaming. There's also a side to it of you own it and you don't have to worry about rights being transferred and things like that. Like Ultraviolet just went down and Disney Anywhere turned into Movies Anywhere, and then they get bought out, and so sometimes things get dropped. There's a lot of things that you're not in control of. I'm in control of this. It's right here in my hand. I control this, and that's really important to me. I just like the collection side to things. Some people collect baseball cards. Some people collect cars. Some people collect I don't know. People collect all kinds of things. People collect spoons. They collect shot glasses. And as a movie person, I like to collect movies. So there's a side to it that is irrational. I think that digital is a great step forward. Streaming services are a great step forward in home video. But I like to have this, and I like the security that I can put that in and we're good to go. I own it. I don't have to worry about an archive changing somewhere or a streaming service dropping a movie. I own it. I like that. And it's the thing I like to collect. So there's some thoughts on that. Landon Peterson, just watched your next after your horror ranking and I loved it. Awesome. Yeah, very cool. I love to hear that. I love to hear that one of these movies that I love that's not a big blockbuster that everyone's heard of, that I was able to talk about it somewhere and got someone to watch it. I try to be pretty intentional to try and find little windows to do that. Like, my channel is built on the big franchises. That's built into I'm fully aware of that. I play into it. My channel's about franchises. If you like big popular franchises like I do, my channel's for you. So whether it's MCU, horror stuff, anything. And because of that, some of the smaller stuff can get lost, or it's not necessarily the priority on the front end. But there's ways that I can work it in to introduce people to things. So Your Next is one that I just love to tell people, go check out Your Next. The other one being Warrior, another movie from a right around the same time period. But I love it when I'm able to introduce people to a smaller film like that, and always looking for more opportunities to do that. David Patterson, I watched Looper last night at 1 in the morning. It was great. I watched that one a couple weeks ago in preparation for this Ryan Johnson ranking coming Friday. So yeah, it's when I first watched it, it was when the movie had just come out in the theater, and my son was like 6 months old, my first child. And so given a plot point inside that movie, that was not a good date night. That did not go well for date night at all. But, rewatching it, you could just focus on the positive side. So there's a lot of great things about that movie. So many questions. All right, I'm going to try and talk faster. Jeffrey Seibert, I heard a rumor about Christoph Waltz playing Mr. Freeze in Batman. Thoughts? Not confirmed. I really enjoy him as an actor. That could be a lot of fun. I'm pretty skeptical of it because they've already announced so many actors as villains, and that one seems like one that you can't just kind of like. Mr. Freeze is a big production. Like, you don't just like drop him in there real quick, like in a leather suit. Like, that's a whole deal. So I'm pretty skeptical of that. But if it happened, I'd be game for it. Cody Leach, biggest disappointments of the year. All right, I got a list. I would keep running lists all throughout the whole year for my end of the year stuff. So, biggest disappointments of the year. The ones I have on here at the moment, and this doesn't necessarily mean I gave them a bad review. Disappointment means, and Cody, I know you know this, but just the way I define all of this, the biggest gap between what I expected, what I hoped for, and what I got. If I expect something to be perfect and then it's really good, that's a disappointment. If I expect something to be mediocre and it's bad, that's a disappointment. Or a movie that I just expect to be bad and it's actually mediocre, that's actually a surprise. That's a positive surprise. Anyway, 5 movies I have right now on this list, and I'll have an end of year 10. But Velvet Buzzsaw, the guy that did Nightcrawler, got back together with Rene Russo, Jake Gyllenhaal, and did just kind of forgettable movie. Us, a lot of people loved it. I didn't love it. I loved the home invasion side, and then when it went to beyond that and it kind of moved into I just didn't think it worked. I didn't think the social commentary made any sense. There were a lot of plot holes, just stuff. The plot didn't come together, so the movie kind of came apart for me in the third act. And because it's a movie that thought it was really important, it comes out pretentious, and that as soon as you come out pretentious, you're like a prime candidate for disappointing me if you don't land that ship, and this one didn't for me. Dark Phoenix, closing out the X-Men movies and era, and the movie was kind of mediocre. It Chapter 2, I gave it a positive review, but I just, as a whole, I thought the movie is a big disappointment from what the first movie was. And then Last Christmas, one I saw just a couple weeks ago. I was pretty excited about it, Paul Feig, rom-com, and then that's not really what it is. Majestic Demon, first for those movies that I watched was Shazam. I think it was good, but the third act battle, when the family gets the Shazam powers, felt a little too silly to me. Yeah, maybe. I dug it. I mean, I think it's a movie that has a lot of silliness built into it. So the silliness didn't bother me. It's when it went like demons eating people is what I thought was a little bit off. Because I like, as soon as you have, Zachary Levi doing the floss and stuff like that, if you buy into that, then the silliness of the third act just seemed like an easy one to swallow. Landon Peterson, favorite other movie reviewer. Well, since I'm good friends with him, Cody Leach, of course, and he's right here in my live stream. I don't know. I don't like to. It's tough to comment on some of that stuff because it's comparative language for actual humans that are out there, and I think that you can. Comparative language inherently hurts people's feelings and things like that. So I get a little bit nervous on some of those things. And I don't watch a lot of them right now. John Campea was really important in kind of me getting started. I watched tons of Jeremy Jahns, Chris Stuckman, AMC Movie Talk back in the classic era Movie Talk. I watched a ton of that stuff. But, those are some of the influences. I'll speak of influences. I'm fine to speak about that. As soon as you kind of go from that area, it just gets a little bit, I think, uncomfortable for me to talk about it too much because I just don't want to create weirdness. What superhero animated series is your opinion better represents its hero than the movies? Batman the Animated Series, but same with X-Men the Animated Series. But Batman the Animated Series is a much better representation of Batman than any live action version that we've ever had by a lot. Even like people, oh, Christopher Nolan stuff is so good. Yeah, but it's not as strong of a representation of the comic book character. It's like it's Nolan's take on Batman in a self-contained universe. And so for Nolan to do his bag of tricks, he just went, here's 80% of Batman mythology gone. And I'm going to tell my own little contained story where Batman's only Batman for about 18 months, and then he retires for 7 years, comes back into the game, rewrites a lot of the villains and stuff. So it's very much a rewritten version of it, whereas Batman the Animated Series fully explores origin, the character, lots of different villains. You have kind of the very comic booky stuff where Nolan took all, like, very comic booky stuff is inside of the Batman mythology. He just went, nope, and did kind of his own thing. So I think Batman the Animated Series much better represented the characters. So did X-Men the Animated Series. For similar reasons, I don't think it's as strong of a series because it's too dense with what they went too dense when they're trying to take these big, gigantic story arcs and condense them into 23-minute episodes. But very good show nonetheless, and better represented the comics than the movies did. Jackson, did watching The Lighthouse make you feel better about Pattinson as Batman? No, not really at all. Because my fear was never, if you like, all the criticisms I have of Patterson as Batman, they were not related to his acting at all. And so then a movie with good acting from him couldn't make me go, oh, I'm all in. If it was an action movie with good acting, it could though. Like, if the movie was him in a cop thriller and you're seeing him and you believe him on screen in these brawls as he's taking guys out in the intensity, that would make me go, oh, Pat, I got this. But the two criticisms I have is that Batman doesn't have superpowers, and so I think it's important that you believe that he's a physically imposing guy. When, like, I used to be really skinny. I'm a little bit a bulkier guy now, so now I'm over 200 pounds. And so when I would see kind of these versions of Batman that Michael Keaton in a padded suit and standing on top of boxes and stuff like that, you just can't do that anymore when you've had so many guys that like hit the gym and you see Thor and you're like, that is a guy that looks like a Thor and that looks like a Captain America. And then you kind of go back, the era of Michael Keaton, 160-pound, 5'8" guy as Batman, you just can't really buy it anymore. And so then Robert Pattinson, I've known him as skinny guy. Like, I haven't seen him in something where he's had any size to him. So when I think I could beat up Batman, that makes me nervous. I don't like that. I want to see Batman and think that's a guy that could actually do what Batman is doing to some extent. Now, obviously, Batman of ninja, and there's more to it than that, but I don't want to see a skinny guy. And in every comic book version, he's a big, muscle-pound, intense guy. And so Christian Bale, and if you see him in Batman Begins, in the training stuff, he just looks massive because he just got as big as he could. He didn't look like an underwear model in it. He looked like a guy that just could brawl. And that's what he's doing in that movie. And then you see him in The Dark Knight, and one of the problems is he cut like 20 pounds. He's a much skinnier person in that movie, and I didn't think that was an improvement. I don't think it made the character better to have him, they show him on this yacht, and he looks more like just like this slim, handsome guy. I don't think that fits Batman as well. And then Ben Affleck's just a big guy. That big, strong, very tall, big, imposing guy, so you can buy that warehousing. The other issue I had with Robert Pattinson is that he is, I don't like to see a character as another character. So if an actor is just so well known as this, they're normally not my first choice for this other big iconic character. So when he's known as Edward Cullen, I just don't see him as, I don't want to see Edward Cullen as Bruce Wayne. I don't want to see Edward Cullen with a Batman mask on. And that's not a comment on Twilight at all. That's not a comment on his acting at all. That is a comment on, in general, that's not the first thing I go to. So Ben Affleck, I've mostly been very positive on Ben Affleck's performance in Batman v Superman. But I was somewhat negative on him being cast as Batman because you see Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck transcends his characters. You just see movie star Ben Affleck, and he has played iconic characters before. So anytime they do that stuff where, like, I much prefer what the MCU is largely done, at least for the longest beginning of it. Robert Downey Jr., you just see Iron Man because he's this guy that didn't have a bunch of iconic roles, and like he Oscar stuff 15 years before Iron Man, but him in his 40s, that was just it. That's all he was. And so then you could just embody that. Chris Evans had been acting for 10 years, but he didn't have these roles that just the common people knew about. Chris Hemsworth was George Kirk in the opening scene of Star Trek, but people knew he could act, but you didn't think about him with other stuff. And I much prefer that sort of thing where you get a great actor to embody. Those are my criticisms. The Lighthouse can't fix that. Once again, I'm answering questions for way too long. Majestic Demon, which show or movie have you watched the most on Disney Plus? The Mandalorian is the one that I've watched the most. I'm not like going through TV shows randomly. I just don't have time to do that. So I'll like watch one episode for nostalgia or something like that. But like, watch an episode of The Simpsons and put on Darkwing Duck to watch the intro. But I'm not binge watching through the shows. I like just to be able to cover the content that I have. Like I have to spend a lot of time watching all this stuff. And so like right now I'm trying to watch through all the Disney post-Renaissance stuff to be able to do a video for Tuesday, and I still have 4 that I need to watch. So I'm not watching like deep on these archives of shows and stuff like that. So The Mandalorian's the one that I've watched 3 episodes of. Betsy, so do you think the DCEU will just peter out eventually? Because if this new Batman isn't in the DCU or the Joker universe, then that's 3 different universes. It's all a bit ridiculous. Well, I mean, they're already, the stuff that they've put out since Justice League has all kind of been doing this. Like it's not coming together. It's tell our own story. Aquaman kind of was like, hey, that's the guy from the Justice League. But beyond that, it's just kind of it's kind of an origin story that would have made a lot more sense to do before Justice League. And then Shazam, it's like, hey, these characters are out there, but it's not tying into any greater story. And so they've stated that publicly, and they've done it with the movies they put out, that they're standalone stories. So, and they've said they don't really have any plans for any meetups, any team up movies. So, in and of itself, I think that says that not necessarily peter out, but the idea that if you're just waiting for the next Justice League, if you're waiting for the MCU-esque crossovers, that's not what this is. That's not what they're trying to do. So I wouldn't think it'll peter out. It'll probably end up playing out more kind of like the X-Men franchise with continuity, where things come out that it's like, okay, that doesn't really tie into anything, and that's okay, you retcon to that, and they're just fine with it. When it's convenient to them, they'll be associated with one another. But beyond that, they're like, yeah, we're just trying to tell good movies one at a time. That's it. If that means we change continuity, oh well. That's what I bet they'll do. Jeffrey, I'm excited for the ranking of all the movies you've seen this year. Slightly different. All the movies I've seen I don't have a list of that, but all the movies I've seen this year, that should be a good one. Especially because hopefully I can do some stuff to kind of like ramp up for it a little bit more. So a little more, have a couple more graphics prepared. Not a couple more, probably. Try and do like banners and stuff. I don't know what I'll do. Hopefully I'll have some stuff to make it pretty interesting. Jackson, Ben Shapiro said, if Cats makes a lot of money at the box office, then we are done for as a society. Do you plan on seeing it? I don't know. I mean, if I'm invited to the press screening, I'll go see it. If I'm not invited, I don't know. It kind of depends on what the chatter's like leading up to it. I haven't covered the trailers or anything, so it's not like built into my channel. Like, what's Sean going to think of the actual movie? I've never watched or listened to the soundtrack for Cats. I mean, obviously with some of the iconic songs, of course I've heard them, but I don't know what the songs are. Like Les Mis, I've actually seen Les Mis, and there's other Phantom of the Opera. I've actually listened to the whole soundtrack before and seen it in different places. Cats, I have no connection to that particular Andrew Lloyd Webber piece. And then, so it's just going to go see it to comment on the CGI. I'm not the target audience at all for the movie Cats. So if I'm invited, I'll probably go. Otherwise, I don't know. It's not particularly on my radar. Majestic Demon, one of the movies that I'm excited for next year is King Kong vs. Godzilla. Kong Skull Island was an awesome Taco Bell movie for me, and I watched Godzilla King of the Monsters a few days ago. Yeah, me too. I mean, I've enjoyed this monster universe in kind of that Taco Bell kind of way. It's pretty dumb. Like, you can argue about the characters, but they've been giving me the amount of mayhem that I want. I know a lot of people criticize them for not showing enough Godzilla and things like that. And I felt like they've had monster action going on, even if it's not necessarily Godzilla. And the human characters are dull. That's true, but they're played by interesting actors. So I've been down for them. Matchy, you think we get Avengers 5 in 2023 or something? Yeah, something. It's tough to say because they're keeping it with what they have announced. It doesn't really help you piece together what they're moving towards. Whereas you could piece together what the goal was with Phase 3 because they hinted at things in Phase 1 and 2, so then you could put it all together in Phase 3 as to, oh, okay, I see what they're trying to do here. But with Phase 4, I have no idea where this is going. So how are we going to kick off Phase 4? Black Widow. What? Then Eternals. What? So, I mean, there's not an obvious star or there's not an obvious anchor for it. So I don't know where they're going. But of course Disney looking at it going like, okay, Infinity War made $2 billion and then Endgame made $3 billion and Avengers, the first one, made $1.5 billion and Age of Ultron made $1.5 billion. These are 4 of the 5 top, or I think that they're the 4 highest grossing comic book movies of all time. All have Avengers in the title, I believe. The 4 highest grossing comic book movies. So they know if we put out an Avengers movie, we're printing money. They know that. And they know we want that. But they're thinking also long term, how do we maintain our brand? So 4 years, that seems like a nice amount of time. Ferrari Forrest, do you watch any anime? Not really. It's not really my thing. Yeah, I'm not an anime person. Ferrari Forrest, what do you use to digitally rent movies? Vudu, VUDU. That's the one I use. That's where my digital archive of movies is, and so then I just rent stuff out of there. Probably about 1 per week. Jackson, watching Stuckman's filmmaking journey video makes me want to ask you, do you have any specific long-term goals that you'd like this channel to lead to? If that's not cool, curious about your future goals. Yeah, it's a little, it's something I'm heavily working on that right now. Actually, this past Tuesday, I met up with someone for lunch, and that's basically what we talked about. And then I'm getting together again with that person this Wednesday for 4 hours. And we're going to meet up in an office somewhere with whiteboards to basically map out our future dreams and goals and how we can help each other. It's a guy I've known for almost 20 years. He's about 20 years older than me. It's kind of a mentor. When I've done some big event planning in the past, and I was like the big idea person just 10 years ago. And he was the grown-up that knew how to do it responsibly. And so we have really complementing skill sets, experiences. You know, he's kind of the person that's done a lot. I'm the person with useful energy. And then even the things that we have done and created in our resumes that go well together. So that's something I'm very much thinking through, because my life goal until February of this year was to be an independent content creator. Not a life goal, but that's my career kind of goal had been for a while. Like, I would love to be an independent content creator. So that's a pretty ambitious goal, to be able to work for yourself doing something you enjoy. And then I accomplished it February of this year when I was 37 years old. So I'll probably be working 30 more years and I've already accomplished what my goal is. And it's a goal that once you get to it, you're like, oh, okay, well, this is what my job is, that it's one that's a hard one to get to, but I got to it. And then it was 6 months of like, all right, can I make this work? Can I make it sustainable? And I have. And it looks like all's good. It didn't collapse and my family's not in danger. And if YouTube as an ecosystem collapses tomorrow, I'm not like in danger. I've got reserves. I've got backup plans and alternatives. And so, so it's good. Okay. So that means now I need to figure out what's my next goal, because that's how I've worked. Like, what's the thing I'm excited about, want to work towards? And that's where I'm at in life, thinking about what's next. So I'm not, for him, he's about 10 years younger than I am, or 8 years, something like that. He just turned 30. I'm getting pretty close to 40. And then he started his channel because of that when he was about 20. I started mine when I was 34. So that changes your ambitions. And likewise, I already had 2 kids when I started my channel. He has 0 kids 10 years in. So it's easier to have ambitions for things like filmmaking and a little bit adventures like that when you're his age versus my age. And he's obviously so much further down the line, 8 years younger than I am now. So it sets him up to do some really cool stuff that's people like me get to be excited for him. Or actually, all of us get to be excited for him. So, for me, what I think about is I like this. I like teaching people, helping people. I like speaking publicly. So where I see myself in the future is kind of having a little bit of an offshoot from this. One of my 2020 goals is to create a course on YouTube, like how to do YouTube stuff. That's been on my mind a long time, and I've put little things out there that shouldn't be too much of a surprise for anyone that's paying attention, that's something I'm interested in. And connected to that, speaking at more Comic Cons. I've got some big podcast stuff I'm working on that if it comes through, the stuff that I'm working on with someone, very cool stuff that it's more kind of expanding kind of what I'm currently doing as an independent content creator. But, maybe speaking more live, not even just on movie stuff, but like more inspirational speaking type things too. Motivational speak, like that's all interesting to me, and helping other people chase their dreams and do kind of some of the stuff that I've done. Like I get excited about things like that. So that's where my future looks like of, this is the base that's there. And then that's some of the other things that excites me. I'm not looking to get a job at E! Entertainment News or have a boss in California or move out to California. Certainly not that. But that's what it kind of my future looks like of how to expand this. And I have very specific things I want to do in 2020 that will be very big steps forward in that direction, whether it's this course that I'd like to launch on doing YouTube stuff. And like I'm mapping out which Comic Cons. I'd like to go to Comic Cons in like 6 different cities. And ideally, if I was able to, pick ones that I could try and teach a panel at or something like that. So then I would have something to of that nature. So. And I have notes and brainstorms and all that stuff. Majestic Demon, what were your first thoughts when you read Henry Cavill hasn't given up on Superman? I was excited. I didn't take that stuff a year ago to be definitive. Because they announced he's out, and then he posted a deal on his Instagram that was very non-definitive, but it was like, kind of had this, hey, I'm not done. I'm not angry. I'm not... Like it had this vibe of like, I like Superman. I don't like WB. That's the vibe I got. And if I'm Henry Cavill, I think WB sucks. Like that's my thought. Because he gets cast like what like in 2010 as Superman, because they filmed that movie a long time before it came out. It was quite a bit early, so 2011. So like 8 years into this, so he was kind of like, he'd done a lot of acting at that point, but pretty quickly kind of became this A-lister because of Superman. And they haven't done a Man of Steel 2 yet. And they're like, let's do a Supergirl movie, and give Harley Quinn a movie, and they haven't done, like, taken the original iconic comic book character, Superman, and they haven't given him a proper Man of Steel 2 yet. If I'm Henry Cavill, I'm like, guys, I'm not waiting around for you. Like 8 years have passed. So if they announced it today that they're going to do another one, it's 3 years down the line. So he's 39 at that point in time. He's a little bit younger than me. I mean, that's outrageous. Like that, there's a side to it of he's like, I can't get in that shape that I did in Man of Steel. Like that's hard. Like Kit Forever. Like that's a tough thing to do at any age, let alone when you're. And then likewise, obviously Justice League debacle that I think everybody. No one seems to have had a positive experience with Justice League. No one. Even Joss Whedon, it's not like he's like, oh, yeah, man, I really enjoyed what we did with that. Like, no one. It's all like, ugh. Yeah, ooh, that was bad. Whether you even like the movie or not, they're like, oh, that was not a good experience. So I was excited. I'd love to see a Man of Steel 2 with him in it. I would love if tomorrow they announced that. I would be so excited. Friday Forest, why don't you have hard drives for movies instead of Blu-rays? Because I don't want hard drives, because I don't have to carry hard drives of movies around my house to watch movies. I don't really understand the question. I don't know if you. I don't know the exact frame of all this played out, but my answer on digital versus Blu-ray is my answer to that question. That I mean, I don't want to be carrying hard drives around. I don't even want to be carrying thumb drives around, because that's just a very confusing way to do movies, is thumb drives and which one has what. This is definitive. This is clear. There's nothing confusing about this. I can give it to my friends to loan them out. People ask to borrow movies from me all the time. Like this, it's clean, classic way to do movies. Hard drives, like I mean, not that I have this drawer right here. Actually, here's one. Not in the best shape. I mean, this is a hard drive right here that has movies on it. This is a hard drive right here that has movies on it. I've got movies, hard movies on hard drives, but that is not the same thing as just something clean, simple as this. Like a hard drive, you're worried about it. One of my kids picks up a hard drive and drops it, and the hard drive's dead. That's happened to me. I've had hard drives with months of work on it that one of my kids just tossed on the ground, and it's gone. This is right here. And obviously a disc can be scratched. Much easier, cheaper to replace it than a hard drive with 100 movies on it being killed by a child. Jackson, I watched Dolomite Is My Name. Wasn't amazed. I thought it was relatively void of any major issues. Is there a moment you liked most? I couldn't stop laughing at the filming of the sex scene. No. I mean, it's not like a moment. I just liked the movie. I thought it was funny. Once you got into it, it was like really funny, and then just a nice story about friendship and oddballs chasing their dreams. Any movie that's about oddballs chasing their dreams is interesting to me, because I'm an oddball and I'm chasing my dreams. So it's the type of movie that tends to interest me a little bit more, because I find that stuff to be pretty powerful. That, you know, even these kind of oddball, like very weird people, Tommy Wiseau, whatever this guy's name is, I forget at the moment. They did things that made their mark on history, even though they weren't like the smartest people out there. They just had something they're passionate about. That's very inspiring to me. That's very interesting to me. So, yeah, I like that stuff. Jennifer Pettis, I've been reading 11/22/63 for the past couple of weeks. Very cool. I enjoyed the miniseries. Jackson, which would you more likely recommend, Knives Out or Clue? I mean, you're talking about a movie that I've been watching for 30 years versus a movie I watched one time 2 months ago. And you're talking about a movie that's 34 years old versus one that technically hasn't come out yet. So, it's not like I would just generically have one recommendation of one over the other one. So I don't really have an answer to your question. I would need to have more time with Knives Out to see how it kind of sits with me. And I don't like to make generic recommendations. Even in the way I make recommendations in my videos, it's like, if you like this, check this out. If you don't like this, you can skip this one. It's prefacing different recommendations for different groups of people. So the way I would recommend Clue and Knives Out would be different, because they're two movies in the same genre, but they're also different in that there's 34 years separating the two of them. Someone loves the 80s. I'm going to recommend Clue. Someone is 20 years old and well, that's a whodunit I should check out, and they're not necessarily someone that's super knowledgeable about movies before they were born, I'm going to go with Knives Out. So that's the way I think about recommendations. It's not, when people generically message me, hey, what do you recommend I watch? That's really stressful for me, because I don't do that. That's why it's like, have you seen a Warrior? Do you like horror? Have you checked out You're Next? After that, I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't generically have things to recommend to people. I recommend to specific occasions to specific people. Friday Forest, I haven't seen any Star Wars movies besides Force Awakens and Last Jedi, but I want to watch The Mandalorian. Can you give me a short summary of everything I should know before I watch it? Mandalorians are a warrior class of people. Like bounty hunters, tend to be bounty hunters. And It takes place after Return of the Jedi. So the Empire has fallen. There's still kind of stormtroopers out there, but they're not very popular because they're part of this big evil empire. And then, Yoda. You need to know about Yoda, and he's this wise guy with force powers. You need to know what he looks like. You don't need to know a lot. It's not tied into the greater mythology. It's just set in the universe. So you should watch the original Star Wars movies just because you should watch the original Star Wars movies. They're just, if you're a movie fan, they are important pieces of cinematic history. So you should watch them. And especially if you're interested in watching The Mandalorian, I don't know why you wouldn't watch the classics movies that are the origin of where it kind of came from. But as for a plot level, you don't really need to know anything. Like, you could watch The Mandalorian as your entry point into it as just a space western, and I think it would make sense to you. There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot of, like, the big reveal at the end of the first episode wouldn't mean anything to you if you don't know Star Wars in general, but you wouldn't be confused by the plot. It just wouldn't be as impactful because you don't have the lifetime ties that other people have. But watch the original Star Wars trilogy, but you don't need to know the plot of it. There's really not much you need to know to understand The Mandalorian. Majestic Demon, are you at all surprised that Batman Begins isn't in the $1 billion club? I know you go back and forth between that movie and The Dark Knight. No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, surprise can mean a lot of different things. Batman Begins was not a big hit film when it came out. It was successful enough. People that saw it liked it, but it only made about, I think it made like $200 million in the U.S. Actually, I'll look that up right now. I mean, it's like right at that $200 million mark. On its original release. Some of that's because it was just coming off of Batman and Robin, which was years before, but Batman didn't have the best reputation at the moment. And Christopher Nolan wasn't the legend that he is now. Yeah, globally, Batman Begins made $375 million. Which is just such a small number, but that's kind of when it came out. That's where things were at. Let's see, box office in the U.S. Yeah, it grossed $205 million in North America. So literally just over. And I knew that. That's information I've always had because I went to go see it opening weekend. I loved it. And then the movie didn't. Wasn't just this movie that killed it at the box office, but it was well respected. And then, Joker's going to be in the sequel, Death of Heath Ledger, well received movie. This Dark Knight opened to, I believe, $169 million. So in the first 3 days, The Dark Knight made 75% of what Batman Begins made in its whole run. That's just how much Batman Begins just was so well received and had such positive buzz surrounding it that the sequel just rode that wave of momentum. Batman Begins started a little bit soft because it's coming off of Batman and Robin, which kind of killed the momentum. So it had to create its own momentum. And then by the time The Dark Knight came out, Christopher Nolan was this legend now, like that everybody's not legend. He's not a legend yet. Everyone respects, like, this guy's really talented. He did indie stuff and it worked, and he's done The Prestige, he did Batman Begins and it really worked. And then the 1-2 punch of The Dark Knight and Inception turned Christopher Nolan into the legend that he is today. Because obviously The Dark Knight, massive hit, beloved by fanboys, even 10 years later, beloved even more so 10 years later. And then Inception, loved by the fanboys and the critics, and it's such an interesting, unique movie that kind of made him this guy that you just have to see whatever this guy's going to do. But so I'm not surprised because I already knew that. And I knew the context of when it came out and everything like that. So it's actually, for most people, the surprise isn't just that it's not in the $1 billion club. It's that it's not even 500 million. It's not even 400 million. Like, it's so low in the world of comic book movie stuff. Dave Hudson, I definitely agree with you on not liking to see actors that are popular in a movie. For example, I think of Onward in the trailer. I just hear Spider-Man and Andy Dwyer. Exactly. And animated stuff, that's been one of the frustrations is that they moved so far into stunt casting that they stopped even using voice actors. Like, there's a whole category of people that are excellent at voice work. That's what they're good at. And they've lost their jobs over the last 20 years because Hollywood is so moved to stunt casting that I'm like, who's going to go see a movie because Chris Pratt is the voice in it? I mean, like, that's very rarely that interesting. And I guess they took the success of Robin Williams as the genie, and then that just became what they did moving forward. And so now everyone's doing this stunt voice casting, but very rarely do you have something as interesting as Robin Williams doing what they did with the genie and letting him do his thing. And they kind of got the wrong message out of some of that stuff. And so then they're just doing the stunt casting, like, what's Tom Holland doing with random ogre guy that voice actor guy couldn't do? Voice actor guy doesn't have a job now, so Tom Holland can. So some of that's frustrating to me. David Patterson, rank all the movies you saw this decade. I don't have that list. Like, that doesn't exist, so I couldn't do that. And it would just be too long of a list in general. If it's going to take, if I'm watching 100 new releases this year, I mean, you could just add up my rankings of the previous 2 years, which were like 3-hour little live streams. So that's 6 hours. This year's probably going to be 4 hours because I'm seeing significantly more movies. We're at 10 hours, and that's 3 years. The other years I saw significantly fewer movies, but even if it existed, you're talking about a 10-hour live stream for ranking that even creating the ranking itself is virtually impossible. Doing it for the year, I build the list throughout the whole year. And I'm thinking about it, and then I reevaluate it, rewatch the movies, tweak things around, think about it. But it's all to state the obvious, it's all stuff I watched within a year. So you have a certain freshness of memory. If I even tried to combine my list from this year and last year, I couldn't do it. Because by the time you get to the end of 2020, there's movies that I saw 2 years ago. And there's just forgettable garbage that I saw in January of 2018. And how do you compare that to the forgettable garbage that I saw in March? Like, that they're not fresh enough viewings to be able to legitimately decipher between which one goes where. And to the degree of where there's 200 movies on this list, or a little bit over 200 movies on the list. And so you're having to be able to decipher to a 0.5% difference. That's really specific. And that's where some of those things just become really impossible to do with integrity. Like, I could just make crap up. There's a lot, like, people like, hey, you should rank this. And it's like, okay, technically I've seen all of that, so I could do that. But it's not with integrity, where it's like I have a fresh viewing, where I'm actually saying what the Sean Chandler that you guys know, watched this stuff through the grid that he watches things and composed something now. That's really different from I watched all of the seasons of Friends back when they first aired. Some of those seasons being when I was a teenager. So it's a different way of viewing things. And people sometimes don't think about that, what it takes to make the content with the actual opinions I have in my videos. Majestic Demon, do you think it's wise for Hollywood to remake all the classic movies that keep getting remade? I mean, I think their current strategy isn't wise. What they're doing isn't wise. I think they need to be far more discerning in what they're remaking and why. And that's part of the problem, is that it seems like they're traced. Seems like the marketing department is greenlighting things over the creative department. It's not the creative department is like, we've got a great idea for a movie. Now, marketing department, how do you sell this to the people? It's the marketing department having a gimmick, an angle, in the studio wanting to run with that. And that's where things are off. And so that I didn't come up with that idea myself. That's an idea that I heard from John August and Craig Mazin. They have a podcast called Script Notes. Both of them have been working screenwriters for 20 years. And these are guys that have done A-list stuff, prominent directors, and worked with prominent directors. Like, they are real deal screenwriters. These are not schlubs. I mean, we're Tim Burton, Todd Phillips. One of them wrote Chernobyl, the hit series from this year. And they're saying the change they've seen over the last little bit of time is so much the marketing department. They're looking for an idea that people already have in their head, so they can just say, like, our movie is this thing now. And it's getting, some of it's kind of stupid. Like there's not, Charlie's Angels isn't this property that feels like it makes any sense in the year 2019, because after post #MeToo, modern day feminism, like you watch those Charlie's Angels movies from 15 years ago. I mean, it is clearly like girls on stripper poles and like, how can we get the girls to take their clothes off and run around naked? Like it's very much designed for what 13-year-old boys love to watch. It's not like this super female empowerment thing with the way it actually plays out. And then they tried to take that property and be like, let's do 2019 spin on it. So it didn't connect with a lot of people. And so they're doing a lot of things like that where it just, that's not a wise strategy to let marketing drive things over great ideas. Landon Peterson, do you prefer making rankings or reviews? I don't know. I think it's cause so much. It depends on what I'm ranking and what I'm talking about. Have I ranked it before? Or am I just updating a past one? Am I interested in doing a deep dive into a specific movie? It's tough to say. There's so much of just part of what the work is now that it's the way I would even just talk about them is work language, because it's like with the rankings, a lot of those ones can be pretty easy. They're a lot easier to film. I don't even know if that's true. Rankings can be so different too, because there's ones where there's 4 movies, 3 movies, and there's ones where there's 20 movies, and so and sometimes they're highly scripted. Sometimes I don't have anything. Like this one I did a few days ago with all the $1 billion comic book movies, superhero movies. I didn't have a single note in front of me. I had the list. That's all I had. The note I had for it just had the order of the movies. I didn't have one thing written down about any of them. Whereas my one I dropped today on the Disney Revival, that was scripted every word was scripted. And I didn't, when I repeated it, when I did takes, I wasn't trying to make sure I said every word that was on the screen that I wrote, but I was trying to say every idea that was written. So there was something fully scripted that you could read, and it was written in paragraphs, and then I tried to record that. And then same with my MCU rankings are heavily scripted, because I've got these jokes I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to be really concise because there's so many movies. So I've got a lot of different thoughts. It's some movie reviews are just kind of tedious to do, because it's kind of like, all right, I don't know what to say about this. I don't even know if my audience is interested. So sometimes I have that kind of vibe coming out of the movie. Like I don't have a thing I'm passionate about. I don't have something to trash about it. I don't have something to praise about it. It's just right in that mediocre middle. Like I wasn't bored. I had a little bit of fun with it, and so I don't know what to say to make this video interesting. In other ones, it's kind of like, oh man, a bunch of things to talk about with this one. So I don't know. I don't really know if I like doing rankings or reviews more. I'll say this. Right before I started this live stream, actually we're over now. Okay, I'm going to fly through these last questions. Right before this, I was writing tomorrow's video, which is the Frozen 2 songs ranked. And that was a lot of fun for me, because it was a lot of times when I do something new, it kind of takes me a little bit to find my groove. I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel natural. Writing that ranking actually felt really natural. I didn't have any problem coming up with something to say. And I felt like I came up with the right amount to say with each one. I haven't filmed it yet, but so I don't know. There's some thought that somehow ties into what you just said, but not directly. Majestic Demon, do you think Far From Home teased a multiverse because of the scene where Peter, Mysterio, and Nick Fury are all together? I think the multiverse stuff, some of what made that movie kind of clever is that they poked a little bit of fun at the audience by having Mysterio poking fun at the people in the world that existed there. So the things that Mysterio is critiquing about the general public are actually critiques of the comic book movie audience. So the movie was a critique of the genre that it's a part of, and it's MCU making fun of themselves a little bit. And so the multiverse stuff I felt was all kind of them having fun somewhat with where they're going, things that they've teased before, things that they've talked about a little bit before that you see inside of Endgame. But let's mess with the audience, because the audience wants us to go kind of bonkers with all of this. So let's say that we're going to do that. Let's have fun inside the movie with that. And then at the same time, like, no, guys, come on. Everything doesn't have to be multiverse going full bonkers. Everything doesn't have to top everything. And, you know, even the critique he says, or he's like, you just say some mumbo jumbo and people go along with it. It's like, yeah, that's true. We got to buy into a lot of mumbo jumbo with these movies. So it's kind of fun for them to poke fun at that and even have a scene where Nick Fury goes, or I guess it was Talos goes, what? That didn't make any sense. Majestic Demon, the package I sent is scheduled to arrive December 4th. I realized it was the wrong one that I sent you. Hope you still enjoy it nonetheless. I'm curious now. Ferrari Force, what worst big budget movie CGI? The Mummy 2, Mummy Returns, has some shockingly bad CGI in it. And I guess there was something went wrong with where they were processing the Rock CGI at the end of it. Dwayne Johnson, his Mummy character at the end of that movie, or not Mummy character, but Scorpion King character. Something went wrong, so that they didn't have all the computers they needed to render the graphics. And so then what you get is legitimately unfinished CGI inside of the film. And this is a massive blockbuster. There was a big hit. It was a big hit. There was a sequel to a big hit. And you just see this unfinished CGI on the screen, and it's really bad. Osin Downer, thoughts on The Good Place? I've never seen it. I don't even know what it is, really. People mention it to me all the time. I have no idea what it is. Jackson, how certain do you think it is that Sonic will be certified rotten? I mean, I have no idea. I don't have any guesses as to how the movie will be received. Because certified rotten is actually, like, it's not that hard to get a fresh. You don't have to be that good to get a fresh rating. So, and because audience expectation is low, that kind of sets you up to surpass people's expectations. And when you pass people's expectations, it's more likely that they'll err on the side of positive than they would have otherwise. If they're expecting it to be great and they left disappointed, then they're more likely to go a little bit more negative than they would. Just being kind of basic human psychology of the way that emotion that we feel leaving the theater. So I don't have any certainty that it'll be negative. David Patterson, my showtime for Knives Out is 30 minutes after therapy. Cool. I don't know how that ties it, or not sure exactly what that means, but cool. David Patterson, I might see Dr. Sleep tomorrow. I really enjoyed reading the book, but it was not as good as the Shining novel. I don't like comparing books to movies that are not based on them. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen my review. I really dug what they did with Dr. Sleep. I thought it did a lot of things really well. I haven't read the book, though, so I don't know. I can't compare that one in the mix. I did listen to The Shining. So I have thoughts on The Shining, but the nature of the Dr. Sleep story in the movie, just inherently on kind of all levels, more directly interesting to me. David Patterson, The Dark Knight's box office is very impressive to me because it wasn't released in China. Yep, exactly. I mean, you're talking about a movie that didn't have certain benefits of, like, China 10 years ago, not 3D. All that helps. Or all that hurts it. Makes it more impressive. Helps it be more impressive. That's what I said. But honestly, even I saw Dr. Sleep earlier this week. It was a very good movie. And my only minor complaint is that it was too dark of a film. I mean, it's really dark, especially the scene with the baseball kid. Whew, that's brutal. I don't know, I'd say that too dark. I mean, we're talking about in the realm of The Shining. Darkness is built into it, so I wouldn't. I could say it, like, if that's why a reason you didn't like it, I can understand that. Totally understand. Like, I'm not going to tell you, well, just because it's dark doesn't mean you should like. Of course, if it's too dark for you, or darker than you like, totally understand. I wouldn't generically take that as a criticism of the film so much as a way that it's not for everyone. Majestic Demon, quick example before you end the stream. Big budget CGI film, The Wolverine. Yeah, Wolverine has really bad CGI. Weirdly bad stuff of, like, why are his claws so shiny and fake looking? I don't understand why this movie 10 years in it looks like that. That's not good. Ferrari Force, besides movies, what are your hobbies? music, going to the gym. That's the stuff right now that I do that's extra outside of movies. Obviously spending time with my family. But, it's just trying to stay fit, go to the gym with my buddies, and then do music stuff with my church. So that's what my life looks like. All right, everybody. We are at an hour and 10 minutes. I got to shoot this video for tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about it. It can be a fun one. A little bit something different for me. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and for your support. I really do appreciate it. I should probably do this when signing off. Talk to you later. I guess see you next Saturday.